Hello everybody, and welcome to my first video in what is going to be a series of basically PvP guides for Wildstar for certain classes that I play. This one is going to be my main class, which is obviously, as you can see, Spellslinger. A lot of people have been wanting, a lot of people have asked me a ton of questions on this class, like what to do, what to rune, etc., etc. So I came up with this idea about 2 days ago, and I'm basically going to be doing, instead of written guides, which I do have a few of them on a website called Early Game, which I'm pretty sure you've maybe heard about or maybe not. I'll put a link in the description below of all of my guides over there if you're interested. But I'm going to be doing a video series instead of just writing guides, which I feel would convey a much easier, basically, it'll be a lot easier to explain things in a written guide because you'll actually be able to visually see things. So, excuse me a second. Motherfucker needs his coffee. Anyways. So, first thing is basic runing for Spellslinger. Now, this one's very, very straightforward. It's basically devastation as far as the eye can see. You want as much crit hit and as much critical hit severity as you need, as you want, or as you can get. Obviously, you want your 8 of 8 class set, which I remember back when I first started Spellslinger, there were some Spellslingers, there was a couple that I knew that actually went 4 of 8, which honestly I don't think is very good, because that extra 10% PvP power is absolutely disgusting when you actually get that 2 stack on the 8 power. Basically, after hitting any charge shot or true shot or assassinate, it increases your PvP power by 5% on a 2 stack system for 4 seconds, which is gigantic. I don't know if that is on the actual percentage or the actual value, but nevertheless, it's more damage, which is what you want in Spellslinger. So, the weapon fusion, this can be interchangeable between Bludgeon and Venom. Venom is, honestly, I think better, because more than likely you're going to have at least half the DPS on your team running Bludgeon, so you're basically going to have more than likely a useless fusion in your weapon. You can choose to go that if you would like to. I would suggest only doing it when there are no stalkers, because there's stalkers all over the fucking place and it's ridiculous right now. Almost more so than slingers sometimes, which is actually kind of funny. So I would personally recommend going for Venom most of the time, but you can go Bludgeon if you would like to, if there are no stalkers or stalker tanks therein. Next is Deadly Blows. I used to run Blood Rage before the amp tree changes because we basically just had way more damage. I mean, we still have tons of damage, don't get me wrong. But the amp tree changes, I feel that the crit sev nerfs on the amps, I kind of need Deadly Blows now over Blood Rage. So that Deadly Blows gives you about 8% crit sev when fully stacked. So that basically is like a 2% increase of crit sev on the crit sev amp loss. So they took out 6% from the crit sev amps from a total of 12%. It's now 6%. So before you could get away with, you would basically have Deadly Blows constantly while having Blood Rage, just about. So now you have to basically make a sacrifice and not having the extra percent damage and lifesteal, and use Deadly Blows instead, which I think is fine. I still do retarded damage, so I mean, you could use Blood Rage if you'd like to. I would just prefer Deadly Blows. It just seems to be a better choice right now, given all the changes. It's obviously your class set. I run Brutality personally. I think Brutality is better. Only for my BG specs, my True Shot and Charge Shot spec. Break Free is also a good option. Break Free is always a good option. I just prefer the extra free crit. And of course the extra 10 seconds of, fuck, it's bugged. I think it's about 144 PvP power rating, I believe, which is pretty good. I mean, it's extra damage for 10 seconds on your rapid fires, flame bursts, and assassinates, so, you know, why not? Let's see, where did I leave off? Okay. Boots, I run Acrobat personally. I think 3 dashes with 3 orient is OP. Quick Feet is also not bad. I mean, I prioritize the extra dash highly for sprint jump kiting and shit to proc that more often and proc reorient more often. I think that's better than Quick Feet and Speed Burst, but you can honestly pick either of the 3 and you will be perfectly fine. It's personal preference, really. I personally think Acrobat's a little better in most aspects compared to the other two, but you can run whichever one you'd like. This is just my personal preference. That's just my playstyle. Legs, there's no fusion because there is no good leg fusion. You can just throw 2/6 Resurgence crit hit chance in there to fill up what would have been a fusion slot. Enrage is what I use for glove fusion because even though I am a Spellslinger and I am ranged, I will more than likely get tagged by some form of damage to proc this completely. That's a free 6% damage basically all the time. You should almost always get this. I don't think there's any good. I don't think there's any other fusion that can actually compete with this one, personally, for slingers at least. And then chest fusion, I do not use a chest fusion. I think full strength is actually pretty fucking bad. I think the scaling is really bad, considering, like, I mean, look at this vigor. I mean, you're going to add, like, what, an extra 1% or some shit like that? I think it's terrible. I would rather just go with either 2/8 Vindication, which is what I'm using, for extra crit sev, or you could, once again, go with 2/6 Resurgence for extra crit hit. I think you get much more out of that than, like, an extra 1% vigor and some BS, like, lifesteal value, which is, like, 0.2%, I think, which is really bad. For shield, now I would probably go with a high mid shield because you don't want your health bar just instantly dropping when you get hit. You want your shield to tank most of it for as long as possible. So if you're looking for, like, a lot of people actually, like, screw up their energy shield a lot. Like, they actually would use, like, 25%. Like, I've seen some people use 25% mid when there's on Spellslingers, which I think is really bad. You want your shield to be tanking a lot of the upfront damage that you start off by taking, because most people will use big cooldowns to start off. Like, they'll build up for a few seconds depending on their class, and then they'll start using big cooldowns. So you want to have at least half your shield ready to tank that, and not your health bar. It basically gives you more uptime in the long run compared to a 25% mid. So you want to get a very high mid, at least a 62.5% mid, and you want to get a 2.69 reboot time, and the regen rate does not really matter at all with a reboot time that short. Excuse me. Throat's already given out on me. I haven't talked this much in a while. Anyways, that's basically the runing and my thought process on why I run certain fusions over others, and of course, my gadget. So next we will be covering LAS and LAS variants, such as the dueling build, the arena build, and my alternate spec compared to this LAS. So this LAS that I use right here, very bottom, this is my most used standard LAS that I basically use this 90% of the time. This build is basically you just charge shot, and then you can just constantly spam rapid fire over and over again, and you assassinate when the target's low. You can start out by doing you can also start out doing charge shot, and then you can rapid fire for a pro rotation with flame burst, and then normally when you start out a BG, you'll have at least 2 of these bars left, and then you can do 2 surge assassinates on whatever target you want to open on, and then you can basically just constantly spam rapid fire and charge shot off cooldown with your spell power regen. It's basically the only way to play this. It's very simple, very straightforward, and it works in almost all situations. The other variant, which I will switch to in a moment here when I'm out of freaking combat, please help. I got a combat already? Hello? Carbine? Alright, we're good. So the other variant that I use is a much harder to aim version, but it's still pretty simple. Is dropping charge shot for true shot and dropping flame burst for flash freeze. So this one's pretty simple. It's just true shot is a much harder ability to aim. Oh, okay, the game's lagging. Hello. Okay. Anyways, true shot is basically a much harder ability to aim for 2 reasons. 1, the telegraph. Look at how slim that is. That thing is skinny as hell. 2, it's also has 4 shots and also takes a much longer time to channel than a charge shot would. So you have to be much further away from the target to actually make a lot of use out of it, whereas with charge shot you could basically be, let's say, this close and be perfectly fine. To the point where they won't be able to int you in time when you're charging it. But back here, like, the reason, like, true shot has this extra range for a reason than charge shot. Like, it has a longer range than charge shot because it needs the extra range. It also has the upside to this build is that the reason I don't use Flame Burst is because True Shot, if you're actually good at aiming it, has much, much higher burst potential than a Charge Shot ever will. Granted, you have to hit all 4 shots for this, but if you're good at aiming it, like the other one Spellslinger that comes to mind is Chili Chills, he hits True Shot like it's nobody's fucking business. True Shot can do monstrous amounts of damage. It's just much more damage than Charge Shot. It's just a lot harder to use compared to a Charge Shot. So that's that build in a nutshell. Obviously, use Flash Freeze on grouped up like targets like this, and then you can True Shot to combo them, and it does a monster amount of damage. It's basically the same playstyle, it's just like a couple alterations from the Charge Shot build. It's really just Flash Freeze clumping, like a bunch of people and then True Shotting them. And obviously, you know, this has a longer cooldown than Charge Shot, so you'll be spamming Rapid Fire more often, so you don't want to miss any of your Rapid Fires there, even more so than the other build. Okay, so that is the variant, the BG variant of my Charge Shot build. It's a more defensive version if I ever get focused a lot. The other one is, this is my arena setup. This is what I use for my 3's comp for arena. This one is very rapid fire based. Basically almost entirely rapid fire based aside from having T4 Assassinate. T4 Assassinate in this build, at least for arena, is let's say my team is hitting let's say this is like a medic and an Esper and then a slinger right here, or something like that. Or let's just say there's a medic and an Esper here and then a slinger sitting over here. What generally happens is, with this build, you're basically rapid firing normally. Let's say you're rapid firing normally on like a healer, right? And with this build, it has T4 Assassinate as the and since it has T4 Assassinate, instead of just spamming rapid fire over and over, if you have at least 2 surges or 2 blocks of spell power, you can immediately just, after the 4th shot, you can just switch over and spam all your assassinates into the side target on the slinger. So what this does is it cleaves damage. This is just for arenas, by the way. Technically, you could do this for BGs as well if it was in the right circumstance, but this is strictly for arenas, what I'm explaining here. So yeah, as you're rapid firing the target here, you could basically just throw 2 assassinates at the target over here and cleave damage. And if one of them crits, you could actually pressure over here as well. You could just pressure this person while, since I have a warrior, I'll just say while my warrior pressures the target over here, I'll be pressuring this target over here. And we'll basically just be cleaving a bunch of damage all at once, like pretty much immediately because of how fast assassinate bursts, if even just one of the 3 crits. So that's pretty much what this build focuses on damage-wise. Since it's more rapid fire focused, you proc trigger fingers more often, therefore your CCs come up more often. So you'll be able to clump up like 2 or 3 people, even 3 people even, sometimes in arena with flash freeze, or you can even gate stun them sometimes as well. That's basically the playstyle of this. It's just basically holding down rapid fire a lot and assassinate hard switching with burst when you ever see the opportunity open up to you. Pretty straightforward. The last build, which I will go over in a second here, so I can get a combat for the billionth time, okay, is the dueling spec. Now this spec is very nerfed, I will say, compared to what it used to be, because Regen Pulse literally got nerfed by like 30% of its base value. It is like mega hella nerfed, but it is still viable to run this in duels if you so choose to. Basically, it's even more rapid fire, like you're holding down rapid fire like 95% of the time here, while spamming Void backed off cooldown to kite, and Flame Burst, of course. But basically, you literally just hold down rapid fire 24/7, and whenever you get, like, let's say I'm half HP, and I need to heal up, you just pop Regen Pulse, throw Void Pact, just keep spamming over and over again. That's all you do. And if I get low again, spam Regen Pulse, just keeps literally just spamming over and over and over again. Very simple build. First time I saw it was on EU, and it looked awkward at first, but after I saw how stupid it was, I just had to run it. And it's basically been very good ever since. It hasn't really let me down once, aside from one time in Ilium, but I won't go into that because I'm bad. Anyways. So those are all the LASs that I use personally. There are some builds that are I would say outdated. They're just not in meta right now because of rapid fire. Like there's quick draw railgun spec, which is basically charge shot and true shot in the same LAS, but obviously you can't have rapid fire because you have to TA both of those. That's an older spec for one before rapid fire became good, so I'll leave that for later. I don't really need to go into detail about that spec. It's not really used as much anymore, if at all. Okay, I'll go into the amp tree next for these LASs. The amp trees are pretty straightforward, I would say. There's a couple alterations you could do. I used to use Speed of the Void on almost all my LASs when I was starting out as Slinger, but with Sprint Jump Kiting, you could basically completely nullify this. Like, you don't really need this anymore, in my opinion. If you're good enough at kiting, you don't really need the extra move speed. You can put that into like a reorient, readiness. You could just take this out entirely and put it into like T1 amps even, like these I have over here, armor, pierce, and crit sev. Actually, I think when I changed this, I put it into piercing shots, which that's what really boosted my damage. But yeah, generally this is the amp tree you would want to run if you're going to run this build right here, the standard BG build. Same thing with the... oh, excuse me. Same thing with the true shot spec as well. You want to be running this. There's really no variations. You could do one variation you could do if you wanted more upfront damage on your rapid fires, is you could go for true sight, which is okay, I'd say, but to get true sight, you have to drop locked and loaded, which is really bad for charge shot specs, because that's an extra 24% crit sev that after the drop 8 changes is not affected by soft cap DR. So it's very OP. It's even more strong, stronger than it was before. So to get True Sight, you'd have to drop that, which I only use True Sight in the other two specs I was talking about, which I'll get into in a minute. So yeah, you could do that technically. You could just drop this and then drop these two amps and then this and go here and then down here to get True Sight. I would not recommend it though. I would just stick to this. I've done a lot of different amp tree variants to this, but this one has been the most successful for me. That's healing. I don't really want to go into healing. I'll go into healing in another video, by the way. This one's just going to be strictly DPS. Healing is not really... honestly, Healslinger is not that in-depth. Honestly, it's pretty straightforward once you start to do it. But maybe I'll do another video on that. Anyways, this is the arena spec. Like I said, there's no charge shot or true shot here, so I can drop locked and loaded. And I don't know why I have a crit sev. I could just go over there, but I'll change that later. Ideally, you want this to be right here, because 2% armor pierce is has higher EB than 2% crit sev. So yeah, you want True Sight because, once again, RF-based spec, you're spamming this 90% of the time. So and also you can maintain your distance most of the time as a Slinger because of how much you kite, so you'll be able to get this proccing basically every single rapid fire. And it does proc every single rapid fire. Like, it doesn't proc once, every single rapid fire you're seeing, it's proccing right now. So it's basically, instead of shooting 3 times, it's shooting 4. Which is really, really OP. So I would always suggest using this if you're going to be using this spec. I would not drop this whatsoever. I think it's very good. Even in arenas, it's still good because no one really wants to focus a Spellslinger, even as if they're melee. Like, no one wants to try to chase a Slinger 24/7. It's very frustrating to deal with. So you'll be able to proc this almost every single time in every single aspect of PvP in this game. So always run this. There's really not much other variants of this. I don't really see anything that I could actually... Yeah, there's really no other, I would just run this. I can't really see another variant of this. Maybe you get dash regen. You could, yeah, maybe you could. Maybe you could drop this and put it into dash regen if you really wanted to kite, like a bitch, but you don't really need it with that T8 Void Pact. The dual spec, very similar. I used to do something, I don't know if any other Slinger did this for the dueling spec, but before the nerfs, I would actually drop some of the damage amps and actually go into the support tree here to reduce focus costs, because I would actually go all the way, almost always up to here, because instead of lasting let's say just under 2 minutes before you run out of focus, you could last almost 5 minutes, which is insane. It's just you have to be extremely good at your rapid fire accuracy, otherwise you would not kill anything. Because I would have to drop like this. I wouldn't drop this. This is too OP. I would drop this. I know I dropped this. I'm pretty sure I dropped a Deadly Chain too. Actually, no, I can't because I have two. So I would just drop this, and I would drop a bunch of T1 amps all over the place here. Like, I'd definitely drop this too, which I just can't do. True Sight's too good now. But yeah, before that used to be viable. After using it, I literally tickled people like I was almost a tank. So you basically have to go either full damage in your amp tree and kill them before you run out of focus, or you basically just lose the duel. But yeah, that's basically that. So that's all the LES and amps we're going to go over. Now, what I'll explain next is the stuff I've seen slingers do when they're opening up in Battlegrounds is really bad. Like, some slingers will just run, okay, let's say you're in halls, and you're just jumping off the platform, and you're going towards the fight here, okay? I see some slingers don't even charge a charge shot, like, they'll just walk up here, and they'll just start spamming rapid fire. I don't think they realize the amount of power that you can do. Like, the amount of, like, juking power, like, it puts so much pressure on them to just hold down a charge shot, like a brutality charge shot here. It forces them to move left and right rather than center, and that gives your team control over the center circle, because instead of moving forward, they're trying to like juke this way or like this way instead of moving straight forward. So that's one thing. Also, it's much easier to drop someone once you have the charge shot dot on them with rapid fire. It's like, granted, you don't get your piercing shot stacks off first, but you'll like with charge shots cooldown and void pact, you're more than likely going to be spamming, like shooting it like 2 seconds later. So, whenever, basically in every single mid push, always start with charge shot and brutality up every single time. You could hold brutality for the next charge shot, but I would say get the crit damage off first. Get that big burst off first, so your team has the opening advantage. That would be like the most ideal opener for your team to have. It makes it much easier on you as well. But already puts pressure on healers as well. Excuse me, I gotta yawn real fast. Okay, so that's that. That's generally how you want to open as a Spellslinger. With Tiki, with Wallet Tiki, if you can, if I'm not on your team, because I love sword buff like it's my life, always see if you can get the sword buff, because that one gives you a much better, like, it lets you aim at specific targets better coming from the side, and of course you'll have the extra, a ton of extra damage from sword buff. So you can basically just literally take control of the first mid fight in Wallet Tiki, no problem, if you get sword buff as a slinger. You have much longer range than almost any class in the game, aside from a TK Strike Esper, and obviously just tons of damage. So that's generally what you want to do there. That's generally how you want to open up a battleground, because some slingers just, I've seen some shit, let's put it that way. Alright, so next I'm going to go over basically just how to kite as a slinger, which some slingers, I gotta say, you gotta get better on the kiting. Some slingers I see don't even use sprint bar. Like, they don't ever sprint when they're kiting. Like, they just think the shift bar just doesn't exist on their keyboard or something like that. It's actually kind of silly. Let's say you open up on, let's say you're fighting a warrior, right? Like, warriors are probably the easiest for me to kite, even without flash freeze. Let's say a warrior's opening up on you, and he's like, let's say he misses Ripsaw because you dash to the left here. Like, obviously, you gotta dash, like, I'll go into that after this, actually. Okay, so let's say you're opening up on a warrior here. Alright, let's say he starts fighting you. Generally, you want to dash away and juke his potential incoming Ripsaw to slow you, so he can overload your shield and start damaging. And let me get in combat here. So you normally want to dash like this, and then sprint, and then jump immediately, and then let go of your sprint bar the second you jump in the air, because the sprint move speed will still proc. The sprint move speed will still proc while, like, you won't have to hold it down while you're in the air, because that'll just drain your sprint bar as you're jumping. And you want to save as much of your sprint bar as possible without having to use reorient, so you can save your dashes as long as possible. So generally, you just dash, and then you hold sprint, and then double jump immediately, and let go of your sprint bar. That's basically how to sprint jump kite against any melee. So, say he's running at you, dash away, sprint jump kite, and do this, like, you basically just sprint jump kite between every, like, 2 rapid fires. It just makes it a lot easier to kite, and then you dash, like, let's say he just, like, uses leap there, and then you dash that, and then you just, like I said, just constantly between every 2 rapid fires, you just want to sprint jump kite like crazy, then you dash again, assuming he leaps at you again. Just constantly try to do that. Just constantly like sprint jump kite like 24/7 away from melee. Obviously you wouldn't move left and right, you would constantly move like this. Just over and over again. You know, just back and forth like that. But yeah, that's generally how you want to try to kite a melee. Some slinger, like, it's either that or I see slingers do this. Like, they don't even sprint. Like, they just move super slow. Like, not sprinting here. Look how slow I am. Look at how slow my camera moves. And then this is what happens when you sprint kite. You're so much fast. Like, you see how much faster my character is? It's so much quicker. Like, the camera moves so much faster on the terrain. Okay, well, I gotta decline that. Sorry, peeps. I'll PvP with you later. So yeah, that's generally how you want to kite with your sprint bar, which a lot of slingers don't do. Like, that's why a lot of melees are very annoyed by me, is because they don't know what sprint jump kiting is. It's a very unique, it's not that difficult to, like, once you see it, it's pretty easy to pick up on how to do it. You just gotta practice it over and over again. Like, throw yourself into really big fights with a lot of melee, like, just, man, not even a lot of melee, like, just make yourself known in fights to, like, just constantly focus some melees and then they'll be forced to go on to you. And then you can start practicing it there, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, that's generally how you want to sprint jump kite in a nutshell right there, is just TLDR, every 2 rapid fires, dash away from the melee, like if you're gonna like dash away from an incoming ability like a Ripsaw or something like that, and then sprint away for like a half second to a second, and then jump, let go of your sprint bar, and then turn around and start firing again, and just repeat that over and over and over again. Obviously, when your charge shot comes back up, make sure you get that off as well. And assassinates and all that fucking happy horse shit. Anyways, that's sprint jump kiting in a nutshell. Now, some people, obviously this is a pretty basic fundamental of this game, is dashing telegraphs. Like, let's say you're dashing a charge shot telegraph. What a lot of people I see mess up on is they don't account for server latency when dashing telegraphs. So, like, let's say I'm getting a charge shot at me. I'll use my telegraph as, like, the fictional slinger's charge shot. Some slingers will dash as, like, the second hit hits 3. Like, as it hits 3, they dash. With the server latency, depends on your latency, but generally you don't want to dash here. You don't want to dash as that happens. You want to dash here, as it's like halfway through, depending on latency. That's about like 80 to 90 latency. With this latency that I have, I don't know why it's so low. It's generally 100. You want to dash here at about 75% of the telegraph. Because what that does is, because your inputs are delayed, like, you know, by the server latency, instead of dashing as soon as the C3 shows up, you want to dash like halfway before it shows up. So that way it accounts for server latency, because it tricks them into thinking you haven't dashed yet, but the second they release the charge shot, once it hits C3, you've already, like, it already shows you dashing as they release it. So it's basically just using the server latency to time like when they're going to release a charge shot. You'll see a lot of it if you're going to play again, like if you're going to do slinger versus slinger duels in BGs with charge shots, like you'll see that a lot sometimes from certain slingers, that is. But yeah, that's generally, I could have probably explained it better, but that's generally what you want to do. You just want to, like, just TLDR, dash a charge shot, or just dash a charge shot telegraph when it's halfway into getting into the 3rd stage. You don't want to dash as it's, like, you don't want to dash when you see it right there. You want to dash here when it's halfway on the C2. You don't want to dash as it's in C3. That doesn't, like, you'll get hit with it almost every time. Okay, so that's the kiting portion I wanted to go over. Now, the next one is rapid fire aim pattern. Now, this is something I do based on like the pattern of which rapid fire goes off. So, like, as it's firing, like as the first one fires, I'm already aiming the next one. Basically, just following the player, like, as fast as possible. Like, normally, I'll show it on these 2 dummies actually. So what normal players will do is they'll do this, like, they'll rapid fire, and then as like you see how that one was right there, like how delayed that was, that switch. Some players will do this, like they'll have a really, like, delayed aim. like that delayed aim. Like I've seen some people have this super aim, like delayed aim. You want to have your aim look like this. Nope, I fucked up. I fucked up again! Yeah, as the first shot comes out, you want to already be aiming the next one, basically. So instead of doing it like this, instead of waiting until the very end to actually start moving your camera, the second the first one comes out, you want to already be aiming the next one. So you gotta think like 2 steps in advance. I'm fucking up like a madman here. But yeah, you get the general idea. I'm trying to aim while talk at the same time. I'm terrible at that. Also, for some reason, I got mega lag with telegraphs in the house. I don't know why. But yeah, you basically, as like the first one's coming out, you want to already be aiming the next one, rather than doing it when the first one ends. I see a lot of slingers do that with rapid fire, and they start missing a bunch constantly. Like, even I do it sometimes. Sometimes I just autopilot and end up fucking it up, and I have to reset it. But that's how you want to be aiming rapid fire. You want to actually know the pattern of it and actually just it'll make your aim so much better if you do it that way. I promise you. 100% promise you it'll be better. Leading the telegraph of rapid fire, it kind of goes hand in hand of how you want to aim it. So obviously you want to aim it like, you know, like I just explained. You want to do it like 1 step in advance. Like you want to already aim the next one as the first one comes out. But what a lot of people don't know is, so if you see how my character is, like, obviously you'll see the telegraph hit the target I'm at, but if you want to aim a little bit to the left for this, for like any ability, any telegraph. Because what I've noticed is on at least moving targets, like even if they're moving straight, like if this guy's moving straight towards me and I shoot here, I've noticed, I don't know if this is just for me, but sometimes it'll miss, even though I'm shooting straight forward and they're just running straight towards me. But if I shoot a little to the left like this, it almost never misses, like, no matter what. So, while you're practicing this, you want to also try to, like, make sure you're aiming a little bit to the left of each person you're hitting with anything, whether it be rapid fire, charge shot, or anything like that. So, like, normally, let's say I'm just, like, fighting normally, and I charge shot, like, down the middle. That's fine as well. Let me reset charge shot real quick. Hold on. Okay. But normally you want to just aim it a little bit to the left like this, like that. Like you see how it was like almost shooting right here, but it still hit. I don't know. It's kind of like this invisible hitbox or whatever. I don't know what it is, but it's a lot easier to hit skill shots if you just have the player a little bit to the left like this. Like you see how it's like angled a little bit like this, but the telegraph's still there. It's a lot easier to aim like that. Same thing if they're, if let's say they're running this way, you want to like lead a little bit like this. So like, kind of like you're aiming towards the left, but a little bit to the right like that. You generally want to, like, that's how you want to lead all your telegraphs, but you also want to keep like, you know, that little, like this little, like portion right here. You want to keep this angle, like when you're hitting someone, right there. And obviously, depending on their move speed, you either let me reset charge shot real quick. Depending on their move speed, you either like lead your telegraph to like here as they're moving, or like if it's like a void packed slinger, you'll want to aim it like here. But yeah, that's basically how you want to lead almost all your telegraphs, not just for slinger, but for like any class, like even engineer, electrocute as well. That's generally how you want to do it. Okay, the next question the next thing that people wanted me to go over is charge shot versus true shot. Which one is better? Personally, true shot is mega fun, but in the grand scheme of things, charge shot is better for several different reasons. First one is the biggest one. It's a ton easier to hit. So you see how thick this telegraph is? Oh, I'm sure you've seen true shot already, but compared to true shot, much harder to actually aim and land. Especially for someone who's just trying out Spellslinger for the first time in PvP. So that's number one. That's the biggest thing. The next biggest thing would be, obviously, it takes a lot longer to get all 4 shots of true shot off, whereas charge shot takes this long. Literally, just instant. Like, pretty much, like, it's very fast. And then you look at true shot. Oh, crap, I'm in combat in a second. I should have just done both T8 on them, would have been much better. Alright. So, you saw how it was like this fast. It's very quick. Doesn't take long at all. Now true shot, It's very slow compared to that. Look how long this takes. It takes basically 3 times as long, I would estimate, to get all 4 shots off compared to a charge shot. It also just synergizes better with a flame burst build because not a lot of people will account for the charge shot dot. So let's say I'm in true shot spec. I'm not going to charge shot this because I don't want the dot to be there. So this is what it looks like. Like, just pay attention to the numbers. You'll see Venom show up and then just regular rapid fire and flame burst. This is what it would look like with true shot because there's no charge shot dot to affect it. Now this is what it looks like with the charge shot dot, and it's much more profound, like constant damage. It looks a lot more painful, doesn't it? Just constant numbers showing up, and you can basically keep the dot up almost 100% of the time, depending on your spell power, of course. Dude, what is the housing plot lag? Holy crap! All right. So that's generally why you should do true shot over or charge shot over true shot. Is it's much easier to aim, takes a lot less time to get off, and it synergizes more with a rapid fire flame burst build. The reason that the true shot build, that's basically the reason that the true shot build that I run does not have flame burst, is because it does not synergize very well. Also, flash freeze makes it a lot much more defensive build. And you are also able to aim true shot a lot easier with flash freeze if you clump up a bunch of people because it is a 4-second root at base, which is ridiculous. But yeah, that's why you don't see flame burst in that build. You could run flame burst in the build if you would like to. That is if you are basically Chili Chill's level of aiming true shot. Even I'm not that good at aiming true shot, but I have gotten a ton better ever since I started to practice with it like months and months ago. But yeah, that's basically the thought process behind it. And that is basically it for now, as far as I can tell. So yeah, this is going to be the first video in a series of class guides, basically, that I'm going to make. I think my next one I'm probably going to do Engineer, since that's the other class I'm known for, NG Tank mainly. Maybe I could probably cover NG Tank too. I'll cover NG Tank and DPS. I would have covered Healslinger here too, but I think Healslinger is pretty self-explanatory in almost all aspects of it, aside from maybe the differentiation in builds. Like, Runic Healing, in my opinion, is pretty bad for BGs over, like, let's say a Bit Burst build, because it only heals one target now. Like, you can't even heal yourself and another target at the same time. Like, you can only heal one or the other. So that's just my personal opinion. Runic Healing is still amazing. It's just, I don't think it's as good as Bit Burst and BGs ever since the changes to it. Some other slingers might disagree with me on that. That's just my opinion. But yeah, everything else besides the builds are pretty self-explanatory. So maybe I'll go over that in my written guide, which I already did, but maybe I'll elaborate a little bit later. But yeah, that's basically it for the slinger guide here. I'll do NG Tank and DPS probably within either this week or next week. It depends on my schedule. So we shall see. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video guide, and I shall see you all next time.